just tremendous. He's a great character kid. Um, and he knows wrestling. He wrestled at Papillion. I coached him over there with Coach Kupfer. But just great character, and I think that's been a big part of it. I haven't been able to. I mean, to answer your question more directly, I haven't been able to say, this is what we do in terms of our three pillars or anything like that. But I have talked to Josh in particular about those kinds of things in terms of goal setting and such. But it's really been great because as just like you guys know, to have kids, like we have 140 kids that are wrestling in that program. We have so many kids that we have 2 practices at the high school. We have 2 practices at the junior high. And they just go. But it's the right people, just like you guys. So anyway, Coach, I'm sorry. I don't know if I answered your question directly, but.
You're good. I got a quick Josh Gable story. Josh Gable, my very first year teaching, my very first class, was the very first kid to walk in the room.
No way.
Josh Gable, as a senior in high school, was a grown man. And most of you know me, I'm not a very big person. And my first thought was, holy crap, what did I get myself into?
Yeah.
So that's my quick Josh Gable story for you. So anybody else have any questions for Coach Brannigan?
Thanks for letting me share.
All right, Coach Brannigan, I got one more.
Yeah.
So you are one of the, I think there's 5 of us that are original head coaches left in the building. So
okay, just made me old.
I know. I think it's you, myself, Coach Heiser, Coach Lynham, and Coach Gecky in girls golf. I think we're the 5 original head coaches left. So my question to you, if you could go back to day one, we had the opportunity to build a program from scratch, which is both a blessing and a curse because we can't blame it on anybody else, right? We're the ones who did it.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would go back and do differently as you reflect on building a program from scratch?
Specifically, you're talking high school?
Yep.
Yeah, high school program. I really would. There's some things that I would do. Some of it might actually be in personnel. And again, as much as I can sit here and say hiring the right people or having the right people, I'm going to tell you, and I know this will come as a surprise to most of you, but there aren't wrestling coaches beating down the door. They're just not. I have coached at South and have not had a coach in the building since 2003, since we opened. I have not had a coach in the building with me. And I've only had actually one other coach that has been a teacher in the district. So that has been difficult in that way, just cohesion. At the same time, I have a brother that coached with me, one of my best friends coached with me, things like that. So that's been nice and a good opportunity. But I guess if I could go back and do some things differently, I think looking at some personnel, I'd let a couple guys go actually a couple different times just because they weren't. I don't know. They weren't quite the character people that I thought they were. And that was difficult. Not an easy process, but and of course, just like they always say, hindsight. But I think for the most part, that's a lot of it. And of course, as a coach, I don't know. I feel just like as a teacher, I'm still learning, still part of it. I think going in, I would have liked to have had more knowledge, a more knowledge base in terms of what I could do, and maybe not just rely on what I knew from Coach Kupfer or Ron or somebody else, that kind of thing, more so than anything.
All right. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else? Otherwise, we'll bring Coach Johansson up to the plate. All right. Thanks, Coach Brannigan.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
All
you.
right, Coach Johansson, you're on.
All righty. Try to share screen. Good. Okay. I'll just move along here pretty quickly. I just went with the, I think it was 4 questions that Coach H had posed on his email there. So I just went through and addressed those, and we'll touch on those briefly. And then, yeah, have questions you can ask afterwards or just interrupt me. Totally fine with that. Girls track and field, I would say probably, I think this is supposed to be my 9th year coaching, the head coach of girls track. Finally this year, and last year and heading into this year, I finally felt like I was figuring some things out and wasn't screwing things up, like doing things that were detrimental to the program, to the athletes. So again, I'd say it took me about 9 years to get some of these things figured out. So with that being said, girls track, what we'd like to be known for, or what I would like the program to be known for, is having happy and healthy athletes. And the other thing that I throw in there is fun. Happy, healthy, and fun is probably the phrase I say most whenever we are meeting with the team. So that's first. Number 2 there is essentialism. Get rid of the fluff, cut it down, get rid of what you don't need, focus on what's essential, and just hammer on that. And then that way we can kind of pare things down, and relates to number 3 there, the minimum effective dose. Just doing what's necessary to get the most benefit in terms of, how far are we running that day? How many reps are we doing? What are we doing for lifting? I'll talk about it later. We're not grinders. Girls track is not a grinding program. And I'll talk about that here in just a second. Happy and healthy basically boils down to this, this choice. Which would you prefer? 100% prepared, 80% healthy, or 100% healthy and 80% prepared? First 6-7 years, I was definitely on the left. We'll get them in shape, we'll have everything ready, and we'll be ready to go. But by the time we got towards the end of the year, I felt like we were not necessarily breaking down, but just kind of tired and wearing out, and we didn't always perform our best at state. So I would have erred on the left side there. Now I'm I'm all in on the right side there. We'll be 80% prepared and 100% healthy, and we'll get the most out of our athletes. And last year was, we had our best performance, one of our best performances at the state meet. I think it's mostly because our kids were healthy and ready to go. Essentialism, I've got the easy job. Coach H has the hard job with the distance kids. I've got the sprinters and the it's really pretty straightforward. We work on posture, we work on coordination, we work on like foot, ankle, calf, like Achilles stiffness, like on when they're contacting the grounds. It's pretty straightforward stuff. So the idea here is just focus on the essentials, and those essentials will add up to progress, which is of course what we want. Again, Coach H has a tough job with specific endurance and aerobic and all this sort of stuff. I don't have to worry about that too much. So in years past, I was probably going in too many different directions, wanting to get too many things done. And we ended up spinning our wheels and maybe not progressing in any particular direction, just kind of being pulled in all these different directions. So we're definitely focusing on the essentials and hammering away on those. Minimum effective dose. I like this quote: everything's a poison and nothing is a poison. It all depends on the dose. I was guilty of it, like with our sprinters, guilty of overtraining, and kind of thinking about how this might apply to people in other sports, like with our 4x1 teams, we would always work on exchanges until they quote unquote got it. Well, that might be 5 or 6 or 7 attempts. And by that time, they're not running at top speed. It's not effective. And so, now we're to the point where I'll say, hey, you got 2 shots at it. And if you don't get it in 2 shots, we're coming back tomorrow and doing it tomorrow. So, thinking about how that might apply to, minimum effective dose, instead of running a play, until you get it right. Say, hey, you've got 3 attempts to do it, and if we don't do it, we're moving on to something else. Kind of putting the onus on them to be mentally engaged and want to get it, rather than, oh, we have all day to get these things done. So that's another thing that we've done with our training. And we always err on the side of caution. I talk to the girls all the time. It's like, how are you feeling? If they hesitate for a second, you're done. That's it. We're not continuing on. So I'm always erring on the side of caution when it comes to that. I put the wrong G word in my PowerPoint or the handout I gave you. I put grit. I meant to say grind. We're not grinders. The definition of grind isn't a very pleasant one. So I don't see the infatuation with grind, the whole rise and grind philosophy. I think that's stupid. I hate it. We want to be happy. We want to be healthy. We want to be fresh. We want it to be fun. And if it's not fun, then, maybe we just need to take a day off today or take 2 days off till maybe we're feeling better about things. So I would say our program, we're not grinders. And even I know Coach H has to have a different mindset with his distance girls, but I think his philosophy, and he can chime in if he wants, he's kind of working his way around I don't want to say working his way around, but incorporating more of this idea that better to be happy and healthy and fresh than continually pounding away. So, but again, I have the easy job. He's got the tough one. 10-year vision. I thought about this for a long time. I don't want to sound arrogant, and I don't know. It took me a while to put this one down, but I think first and foremost, I think we want to be a model program, and that's at all levels. Model program in the school, model program at the state level for girls track. So I think model program is probably what I'm after when we look at the 10-year vision. With that being said, always looking to attract the best, and I've gotten a lot of help from Coach Horton with softball, and I'm trying to reach out and say, hey, I want your kids because I can help them. And this is a Coach Gurlez famous quote, but track can help everybody, but not everybody can help track. So, some kids I do want to make our program better, but a lot of kids I want just to make your programs better. So I'm constantly looking to attract the best, both athletes wise and coaching wise. I'm always looking for some young kids who can help out, who, might be able to starting out on a volunteer basis. Always thinking of people past that, former athletes who can help us out. So attract the best and kind of getting back to that develop the best. Again, some kids will help us and that's great, but a lot of kids, we're going to help them and we're going to look to develop them and help your programs in the long run. So, and that's the last point there, improving all programs. That's really my focus. We'll be fine. Track will do fine, but we want to help your programs as well. Questions and challenges, 2 really, and not to sound arrogant, like how does my absence, but I don't know. I'm not there as much. So maybe it's just a fear that I have. I have a great assistants. Coach Burr was awesome in the off season. Coach H, obviously, Coach Simpson, list goes on and on. So again, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I am missing some things, and I do like things done a certain way. For those of you who know me, I'm pretty particular. So that's one question I have. And second one is always in the forefront of my mind. Like, how do we continue to grow the sport without overburdening the kids, the coaches, all the people involved? So that's kind of my next thing. Like, what do we do next, but not make everybody do more, which is against my philosophy. So that's all I have. Open for questions.
If I can add something, no arrogance at all. It does make a difference when you're not in the building. I've realized that the last 2 years, being in the building, it is so much easier to run my program the way I went. And, I always had Morris in the building, but it wasn't the same. Right. The kids didn't go to Morris like they will come to me when I'm in the building. I didn't realize how much of a difference it would make for me to move to the high school, but it's been tremendous in all aspects of developing my program like I want it to be with some vision. So not at all. I totally get it.
Appreciate it.
Jared, I've seen your transformation in terms of philosophy from when you were a beginning head coach to where you are now in your 9. Can you just talk a little bit about what led you down the path you've gone down?
It actually, like, my brother-in-law coaches basketball down in Texas, and he just called me one night. He's like, "Hey, have you heard of this?" He named it this guy named Tony Holler, and he's a track coach in Illinois. I'm like, "No." He's like, "Check him out. I think you'll appreciate what he has to say." Because he and I had discussions about training and that sort of thing. And so that's really what kickstarted it. And there's a whole group of track and football coaches who are all about this happy, healthy, fun, minimum effective dose. And so that's what kickstarted it. But then I just started thinking, like, screwed up. So, like, I screwed up so many times. Like Caitlin Cotton, her junior year, she was potential state winner in the 100 and 200. But, we got to do a couple more reps. We got to grind, we got to be ready for state. And it's like, she pulls her calf muscle and can't get to the start line at the state meet. So, and the other thing was, people, when I say track, they're like, "Oh God, I don't want to do so many 200s or do, whatever the workout might be." I lost so many kids because they knew that it was going to be quite a bit. So after losing so many kids and not getting those good, the really good kids out, I just decided, all right, they're high school kids, and do we really need to be doing all that? Probably not. So then what can we do to still be competitive and yet bring the best out and keep the best kids coming out? So I'd say those are kind of the 3 things that guided me.
I just want to say, and I don't feel like I have tons to say, but I do really, really appreciate that happy, healthy for volleyball, because our sport is so year round for our kids. The burnout rate is just real high. And I am a huge proponent of multi-sport, and we're already fighting that battle all the time to keep them in multi-sport. And so with volleyball kids, they're year round and they're jumping every other day, if not daily, in their club season. And so for me, in my program, I love that healthy, happy component of, are we healthy and happy 80%? And whatever it was that you had listed, I was definitely like, I want to be on that right side for high school volleyball, because for high school volleyball, I need them to be enjoying it to the max. I need them to want to be there. I need them to be, this is the place where our memories are made. When they look back on high school season, I want that to be where their memories are. And of course, we're going to work hard every single day, but to have that balance of, I love coming to practice, I love working hard here and working really hard in the weight room, and then that correlating to our success, rather than just having 3-hour-long practices and just burning them out by the end of the season. That is my greatest fear. So I aspire to have that same philosophy in our program, and I appreciate what you had listed there and what you're doing for our kids.
Absolutely. I'm going to jump in here and just add on to that, because I'm in the exact same boat, Katie, with boys soccer. They do that 9-10 months out of the year, and then I get them for that 2 months. And I used to have that same philosophy. I pushed them hard. We're going to practice 5-6 days a week. We're going to be ready. We got 2 weeks to get ready for our first game. And I ran into too many injuries. I ran into kids who were getting burned out. And I've learned over the last several years, I have to make it more fun. I have to give them more time off and just enjoy. and make it more fun program and get everything done in 3 weeks to make it a successful season. I found that they're more successful when they're happy and healthy and having fun. So I agree 100%.
Yeah, and like adding on to that, like I think Coach Horton's still on. Yeah, there you are. He helped me with like I was really excited to hopefully see Lindsay Kelly compete this year, what she might potentially do. But you were talking Coach Lawrence, you're talking about 5 or 6 days of practice. Like she was going to be my experiment because I talked to her like I need you here 4 days a week, and then that's it. And so she's going to kind of be my experiment. Like, do we even need to be like, again, I got the easy part, the sprinters, not, Coach H has a tough one. But can we get away with our true sprinters 4 days a week? And so she was kind of be my experiment with that because she still loves softball. She's going to go play softball. But, when I said 4 days, she's like, oh, really? Yeah, I'd love to give it a shot. The other thing I would say, like, a typical practice for me, if they're in a weights class during the afternoon, we might be done in 45 minutes to an hour at the most on some days. If they don't have a weights class, another 20 minutes, 25 minutes to lift. So we're looking at anywhere between an hour to an hour and 20 minutes for most of our practices. And that's been revolutionary for our kids. Whenever I say we're done, they're like, really? I'm like, yep, go home. They're like, oh, that's so great. I can get my homework done. I can, eat. I can go to bed at a decent time. Like they find it hard to believe when we're done practicing in 45 minutes. But again, I've kind of picked out what I think is essential, and we do that for that day, and that's it. We're moving on.
I really speaking of that, I'm thinking about my wrestlers, thinking about happy and healthy. Man, these guys just do not, as much as we talk about how you should lose weight if you're going to lose weight,
Mm-hmm.
they just do anything and everything that is so bad. And you guys see it, but it's so bad. And man, if we had a wrestler that actually knew how to cut weight and did it the healthy way, they'd be happy and they'd win some more matches. But I think about that, what you guys are talking about, and that's a really tough fight, especially I think in my sport, just because of the weight cut and the loss. When these guys are cutting weight and they're yo-yoing, they're going up and down. I mean, they're 8 pounds difference between 24 hours. You can't be happy doing that. There's no way. And let alone what's going on with schoolwork and things like that. So yeah, that's huge. That's huge. And I wish we could do more about that in our sport in particular. But
Coach, how is Cam Ralston this year? Because his parents, his family, they're health nuts, and I know that he had to maintain his weight. How did he do?
You know what? I tell you, namely because of Angie and Mike. I mean, Cam was able to do it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, when I always impress upon the kids that, if you're gonna not eat, that's completely wrong. That's completely wrong. And that was one benefit Cam has, of course, is that those two being stud athletes themselves, when they were younger, that really helped Cam. And I worry about some of that in the future in terms of him getting bigger and how that's going to work and things like that. But yeah, that's a great point. I mean, he has parents that really help him in that way. And my mom was a nurse, so she helped me lose weight. When I was a freshman, I cut 18 pounds to wrestle because that was the only place that Kupfer would let me wrestle. Even though I could beat the two that were like weights ahead of me, he made me go to 145 pounds from 165. And I'm like, as a freshman, you're going to make me do that. And of course I wanted to wrestle. I wanted to be on varsity, but the only way I did it was by eating healthy and being happy in that way, So I don't know. That's tough.
Coach Johansson, I had a quick reflection and then a question for you. I think Coach Armstrong, I see Coach Armstrong, Coach OD on here. I think they'd back me up and say that football-wise, every year we've shifted more and more to this model. I think, you know, when we first started at Papio South, I mean, we were doing at least 3-hour practices, a lot of conditioning, a lot of extra hitting, and a lot of grinding, as you would say.
Yeah.
And I think we have gotten a lot smarter, and I think it has helped tremendously. My question, and this is the eternal question for me, going back and forth, is where is that line, and where do you find that line? I think you sort of talked about it with you said the word essential a couple of times. Is that philosophical? Is it more literal, where you take a look at their times, and if they're hitting their marks or hitting where they need to be, then you gauge stuff with that, or is it more, you know what, we're going to go 45 minutes today, and that's what we're going to do? Or I guess I just had more clarifying questions about that.
Yeah. I'd say a little bit of like all of those things that you mentioned. Sometimes it's just, this is what we're doing today. I know that, you know, based on what we did yesterday, maybe we had a hard work, you know, what we would consider a hard workout for us now. Maybe we had a hard workout yesterday, so we're going 45 minutes and that's it. And we're, you know, so sometimes it is just that that's what we're doing. Sometimes it's by sight, by watching them. I can tell when they're breaking down form wise. I can tell when they're not running at peak efficiency, and so I'll shut a kid down just by monitoring them and watching their technique and watching their form. And then sometimes it is based on times. You know, like this year we were doing some time in some 10-yard flies, and like Nina Cuevas, she could run, like she can 1.0, like all the time. But as soon as she started, you know, I'm like, I want you to try to get between 4 and 8. Well, at number 7, she ran like 1.07. I'm like, all right, you're spent, you're done. I mean, you might not think it's, you know, 0.7 of a second, but for a sprinter, that's pretty significant. So yeah, we were watching those things as well. So yeah, it's a combination of everything. Sometimes it's what I want. Sometimes it's by sight. Sometimes it's by actual data that I'm collecting. Did that address your question?
No, it totally does. And I guess I'm also thinking, trying to balance the two sports that probably,
Yes.
you know, it's hard. But like, I guess a follow-up question would be, do you ever, maybe this goes against your philosophy, but do you ever go the opposite way? Do you ever find yourself going, God dang, this isn't enough. We gotta crank it up more today because we're not getting what we want? Or is it the less is more thing of you got to fight your brain and say, well, maybe we're not hitting our marks because, I don't know.
Yes.
Did I answer my question?
Yeah, like you totally hit it on the head. Last year was the first year I really got into it, and it was really hard. But that's who I am as a former athlete. Like I was a distance runner. I'm not an elite. I'm not a sprinter type. I'm not, you know, I run half marathon. I'm a grind. That's what I am personally. That's what I know. I'm trying to get away from that, but so that was really hard for me. But now I see the benefits with the kids. You know, the fact that they love coming to practice every day, which is kind of fun to say considering it's track, and most people have this dreaded image of running repeat 200s on the track. So, you know, having a group of 80 kids come in and like actually enjoy coming to do it. It's great. So last year was really hard, especially early, but this year I think I was getting a sense of what I wanted to do with it and what it needed to look like.
Gotcha.
Well, I would say with like, go ahead, Coach Simpson. I'm sorry.
I said, I think initially the girls, you know, almost questioned some things like, oh, really, we're done?
Yeah.
And as the year progressed and they saw their times come down and they knew how healthy they were, and practices they enjoyed them. We got kids to come back out. We're getting kids to come out. I was kind of leery about it at the beginning as well, but the kids are having fun. Their times are coming down. That's all you really want. So.
And I would say with like football, and this is just, I know nothing about football, so you can call me an idiot by all means. But like, just like some of the people I read or follow with like football and track, this group of people, they're like, pick your 10, what are your 10 best sets, 10 best plays, and just run with it and be awesome at those 10 things. And, even if the defense knows that they're coming, be so good at them that they have a hard time stopping you. So, when I think about essentialism in other sports, that's what I'm thinking about is like, what are 10 things that we're really good at? We're just going to do those 10 things and try and stop us type of attitude. Again, that's me reading. I know nothing about coaching football. So
Whoops. I think I'm on mute.
Coach Johansson, what might be, because I agree with all of that as far as minimalizing, get the most out of it. And one, knowing that you're going to get them to give you 100% on if you only have 5 reps, okay, you got to give me everything you got on those 5 reps.
Yep.
That's going to be a key. And I always say that in the weight room too. If you're going to give me 50% on those, then you're not getting out of it what we want.
Correct.
So that's key. So, and it goes with beyond the training. So the training side of it, that I love that. What would you say, and some of the sports are going to be different, the mental grind part of it, not being a quote grinder, there's going to be a point, I think of state volleyball, there was going to be a point, and even Coach H, when you're running long distance, where's that grinding point that you have to teach and instill in them that can still be minimalized, keep them happy, keep them healthy? Is that just, for me personally, it seems something that you just keep putting in their head all the time that we're going to be the most prepared team. We're going to be, when it comes crunch time, we're going to be this because we're prepared to do this. Not because we're not happy or healthy, but because we have done this a number of times to get us ready. So what would you do? What would be your philosophy in terms of trying to instill a mental grind, I guess, as opposed to a physical grind?
In reference to just like other sports in general or track?
Any sport, yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, it could be. Give me your sport. It's easy. I know with sprinting, it's shorter, so it's just like we're gonna do this.
Yeah,
we're talking maybe something that's you get a long season of whatever that may be, whatever sport that may be, where when it comes to playoff time or when it comes to state tournament time, you put in a long season. Aside from the training aspect, what mental aspect would you say would help you in that mental grind? I hate to use that word right now.
No, you're fine.
So
mainly like in the mental side of things.
Yeah, probably, because at some point, and I think Coach Wright hit it too, because they've gone through an entire off season. They've been playing volleyball since God knows when.
Yep.
And so now they're trying to get through an entire season, and now they're playing more and more and more games. Now, it helps when you keep winning. That always helps. But what do you do? What would be a philosophy if you don't want to call it grinding? What gets that mental approach that they're ready to go and prepared that last few games?
Yeah, I think I would relate it to basketball. And I wish Coach G had to hop off because he's doing some player interviews right now. I was pretty pleased with we got to 500 this year, and we did some minimum stuff, like we did some of this essentials type stuff. We never practiced on Saturday, and I would say one of the things that he pointed out is we didn't lose one quarter to injury all year. Like we didn't lose one quarter to injury all year, but yet we were still playing our best at the end of the year. So I think to me it's just if you haven't been ground down, like just pounded upon, and you're just kind of worn down, by the time you get to the end, you're not fighting against yourself. You're not fighting against your body. You're not fighting against yourself. You're not fighting against fatigue. And you're able to do things that maybe in the past you wouldn't have been able to do because you're physically healthy. And if you're physically healthy, you're going to be more confident. If you're more confident, you're going to perform better. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I just think I think the healthier you are, the happier you are, and the more prepared you're going to be, just because you're going to be able to you're physically going to be able to do things because you're not broken down, you're not tired, you're not mentally tired, you're there, you're ready to go. So that, short of like mental training, Coach H is the expert on that. I defer to him. Don't shake your head. Short of mental training, that's how I respond to that. And again, I think we did a good job with basketball this year. I was really pleased with our 500 record. If you would have told me we were within 4 points of the Monarchs coming out to start the fourth quarter at districts, if you would have told me that in November, I'd have been like, sign me up. That would be awesome. So.
Coach Johansson, you and I have had a lot of conversations about this grinder mentality over an old fashioned, which I'm really missing right now.
Yeah.
So something you and I have talked about, and I think this is just a good reflection question for all of us as coaches. A lot of us are where we're at as coaches because we grinded our way to this position.
Yep.
I'm far from an elite athlete. I was an average high school cross country runner. When I look at, I think most of the coaches in our building were probably more similar to me. We're not all Coach Wrights who are playing Division I volleyball, or Coach Brannigan, if you've ever seen his picture in the Monarch Hall of Fame. He looks like some Russian wrestler that's going to kick all our asses.
You had to bring that up.
And then Coach Stanger, who's maybe the most elite athlete person I've ever met, even now to this age. For a lot of the rest of us, we were average athletes, and we had to work our butts off to get to where we're at. And I think a lot of times we bring that mindset to coaching.
Yep.
and put that on all of our athletes. And as we've had these conversations, as you and I have had these conversations about grinding, I mean, I do have the tough job. Distance running is tough. It's not easy. But if I take a grinder mentality, and I've seen this in our program, and Coach Simpson was still sitting, female Coach Simpson, Mrs. Coach Simpson was still sitting there, she'd probably agree. Our kids who are just naturally talented kind of rise to the top. And our kids who are average, who we really need to help us, we kind of end up grinding to a pulp, which is really the definition of grinding.
Yep.
And so it has caused me to stop and reflect. I think we're also working with a different breed of kids these days. We may have kids who have been in our sport for a long period of time, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have kids who are better athletes. I think I would actually make the argument that we're now coaching kids who have probably less overall athletic ability than what we experienced when we were competing and playing. And so we can't coach with the same mindset that we were coached, or bring the same mindset that we brought as athletes, because we're dealing with a different group of kids. So
Agreed.
yeah, I was, before I hopped on this Zoom call, I lead a book study with a group of athletes called from the book Peak Performance. And we actually had this conversation today, and I thought it was fitting with Coach Johansson's presentation. So I'm just going to read you this quote real quick. And the whole premise of the book focuses on this simple equation: stress plus rest equals growth. So yes, we have to stress a body, but then it has to rest in order for us to grow, right? And I think we all know that we don't grow when we're working, like our body grows from all training. In the rest part. So here's this quote that I think fits well in the grinder mentality. It says, "We've lost the notion of smart work at the expense of hard work, which somehow almost always gets confused with more work." And I thought that was pretty fitting. We just had a conversation about that today. So I'll be quiet now.
Yeah.
Coach, I'll tell you one thing over the course of my time in coaching that I have realized probably the most, even in our sport, where generally it is a pretty grind of a sport. I mean, that's that's most of what we do is that way.
Yeah.
I have found that over the course of the year, and initially we're maybe not like this, but over the course of a year, our practices get less and less and less in terms of time, in terms of quantity, in terms of what we do, because we need to go back to being happy and healthy. We need to quit grinding because we're going to be better off if we're not. And I tell you, I used to be of that mentality, just like Clemenger, the stud he is, and football guy, having 4-hour practices. Okay, I got to get all my offense and defense in, and I got to teach these kids every single takedown I know. That's not the case. And I'm telling you, I think some of that, and I think this is kind of along the where you were going with this. I think our clientele is different in that way. Namely, not even just like today, but in terms of our kids at South, even. And not that we don't have grinders, not that we don't have kids that are like that, but at the same time, I think our kids are better served otherwise. Put it that way.
I think one thing that I am also learning with the mental side of the sport is just how critical that piece is to teaching our kids. I think, well, for me, I was a grinder by nature, and I still am. Like, the harder I work, the more successful I will be kind of mentality. Stay in the gym as long as possible, go lift after you practice kind of person. But I actually think that I was less successful than I could have been had I had a less approach. And I think that a lot of our kids just need to be taught that mental toughness piece. And I love what you, Coach H, is doing all the time. And I want to keep implementing that into my program just on a daily basis. So like what Coach Pullman was saying about like teaching the grinding part to an extent, like how to work really, really hard for short bits of time is kind of where I want to, like, I need to figure out how to do that better.
One of the challenges we face with the kids that we coach, and I just have this opportunity to hang out with these kids in Leadership Academy and learn a lot. And then even the kids that I'm doing this book study with, is the biggest differences between when we grew up and when they're growing up is that cell phone. And I know we can blame a lot of things on a cell phone, but I think it's really important for us to recognize if we go back to when we were kids, we rested way more than we realized because we weren't plugged in to a digital society 100% of the day. So when we went home and we rested. And when our kids go home, they don't go home and rest. They go home and they plug in and they're on their phone. And I think I would argue, I mean, just how many times do you talk to one of your athletes in the hallway and you say, "Hi, how's it going?" And the phrase they use is, "I'm tired." I mean, I can't even tell you how many conversations I have with kids and the phrase "I'm tired" comes up. And I think back to my high school experience. I don't think I ever said I was tired. And I know that, I was involved in more activities than a lot of these kids are, but I had time to go down. At the end of the day, I had time to go home and reflect. I had time to go home and unplug. I had time to go home and escape from things. And I think that's a challenge that our athletes don't have right now. And the hard part is we are coaching kids that we can't relate to in that area. And so we really have to step back and really take that into consideration. And I think it's hard. I mean, I'm not good at it. I don't understand. I see it in my own kids and I hear it a lot in conversations, but I can't relate to that because I didn't experience it. But if I want to be successful as a coach, I have to find a way to work within this environment, whether I like it or not. And so I think that's something for us to consider. This impact of a grinder mentality on these kids is we had an environment where we could escape from things, from the grind. There wasn't this message all the time that they just can't unplug from. And unfortunately, we can't control their cell phones at night. It'd be great if we could all collect their cell phones before they left practice at the end of the day and gave them back to them at 8 o'clock in the morning. But, and the control freak in me would love to do that, but I can't. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions? I've enjoyed this conversation quite a bit.
Right.
I'll throw one more thing out there just to add what we've been talking about with the teaching these kids things that we never thought we would have to teach them. A few years ago, we've been in boys soccer, been a top 10 program for 6-7 years pretty consistently. But we weren't making it to state. 4 years in a row, we lost in shootouts. And I knew it was a mental toughness issue, but it all came to head a couple years ago. We were in a shootout against Millard West, and it continued to go shooter after shooter and do extra shooters. And I couldn't get any kids. Kids were scared. I couldn't get kids that would step up and say, "I'll take it, coach." And I didn't understand that. I mean, like you, I was a grinder when I was a kid. I was not the greatest athlete, but I worked harder than everybody. And I forget that these kids need to be taught how to be leaders. They need to be taught mental toughness. And all of these ideas that we're talking about right now, this discussion we're having, really helps me and gives me ideas. And so I just appreciate it. But so that's what I'm looking for out of these meetings. Appreciate it.
You guys want to read a book that I think has kind of opened my eyes in this area is, just the book that I referenced, that I read the quote out of. The name of the book is Peak Performance. It's by Brad Stulberg and Steve Magnus. And the whole point behind the book, both of the authors who wrote this book, they were both high-level performers at a very young age, and then never probably reached what people would consider their potential. Brad Stulberg was kind of an economic genius as a youngster. And then he was working in DC, writing policy for politicians, and then just burned out. Steve Magnus ran a 4:01 mile as a junior in high school, and never ran faster again. And for both of them, they kind of came together and shared their experiences and realized they both kind of burned out. And so they did a lot of research and wrote this book called Peak Performance. And it really, again, I'm leading a group of students through a book study. The conversation we had today was, we talked a lot about sleep today in the chapter. And the thing that just made me laugh is over and over again, they made the comment, I know all these things. I've been told all these things, but a lot of times it was we just had to have an open conversation and almost let them come to the realization themselves, just because we had an opportunity, rather than being talked to, they just had an opportunity to talk it out. And I think as we think about coaching this generation, that's something that I'm finding is more and more effective, is giving them the opportunities to talk it out rather than us having to talk to them. The challenge is that takes time, and that's kind of what they're struggling with right now.
Can I add a piece to that, just because I relate to that so much with my season that we had. There was a point we played a game at Millard West. We played terrible. We lost terribly. We had complete meltdown on the floor. Like kids were upset with each other, and that all happened at Millard West. We came from it the next day with all these people wanting to have a team meeting, and I didn't lead a single part of it. I just organized it, facilitated it, let them talk it out. And I can't tell you how much that was the turning point in our season. I just like, I personally realized that I needed to let that happen more often. Let them have a conversation together. And it was profound for me because I thought I was the one supposed to be teaching them continuously. And they taught each other more during that meeting than anything I was teaching them at that point in the season. And from that point was when we kind of, we went off on our own, you know, we started to forge ahead. But had they not had that conversation with each other, it wouldn't have happened. And I personally took so much from learning that.
I think your story illustrates the generation of kids that we're working with. They're so socially connected. They built this network of peers that I think we can all recognize as elders of these kids, that we don't have their automatic respect, but their peers do, you know, and it's how do we leverage that to our advantage as coaches? I'm a control freak by nature. I have a hard time letting that go. But if I want my teams to perform to their maximum ability, I've got to find a way to work within this world, whether I like it or not. And I don't like it. I'll just be honest. You know, we can sit here and say we wish things are different, but I do want my teams to perform to the best of their ability. I want us to see us max out our potential. And unfortunately, I think that means in a lot of ways I have to give up control and maybe the way I would like things to be, which is, I struggle with that. I'm just going to be honest. Tasha knows that. We've had lots of conversations about that. So.
Coach H, you're the the leader here, but you know, maybe that's a topic we should look at coaching wise, as the mental aspect of sports within some of our time. Last year I would tell you this, why I told my coaches that we had two things that we needed to accomplish, and it was more strength, and we did get there thanks to Kurt, to at least to some extent, and then mental aspect. And like, I felt oftentimes we were mental midgets and we would just fold, you know. Oh, I wrestled this kid 18 weeks ago and he beat me by 1. Now he's going to beat me by 80, you know, something like that. And it just, I mean, that's all it was mental. Everything was mental. And in our sport, they say is 80% mental, and that's a lot. That's a lot. And so I've done some things with mental imaging and such before, but I don't know, maybe that's something, I mean, you know, if you're looking for ideas, put it that way.
I am always ready to have a conversation about mental stuff. That's not something you need to twist my arm about. So I am happy to. Again, the biggest question is mental. You say mental stuff, and that's such a big, broad topic, right? We could go down so many different avenues. So I think something I would challenge everybody that's on this call with is, you know, maybe think about, is there a specific, you know, I'm just reading some of even the chat comments right now, you know, just confidence, and you mentioned mental imagery. I mean, there's so many things that we could talk about. It's just a matter of, let's get a list compiled, and we got time. Let's start knocking them off. And I'm happy to organize some resources to get a conversation rolling in those areas. But I think these kinds of conversations are good, and our athletes would benefit from them.
You bet. And with this Corona, you might have a little time, buddy.
Well, you know what I was just thinking would be amazing would be to have some sort of almost like a curriculum of mental topics, that each coach, it would be universal. So like for every sport, these topics are going to get covered while you're in your sport. And so they go from, you know, volleyball to track, and you're re-talking about those same topics of mental toughness in the area of your sport as almost like a mental curriculum. I think that would be amazing, because I would love to implement like a mental Monday, or I know Coach Watson does that. And if there was this curriculum that we all were on board with, I think that would be fantastic.
I love it. I've got some things that we've put together in the girls cross country program, and maybe I can share some of those things next week. I mean, we've been on this mental path for a long, long time in the girls cross country program, and we've done a lot of different things, and a lot of things that haven't worked, and some things that have kind of worked, and we kind of pull the best and kind of reevaluate year after year after year. And I think it's definitely helped our program. I always joke and say if I could go back to school again, I'd go back and get a sports psychology degree. I wouldn't be a math teacher. So I love that idea. But again, I think it just comes down to, it's got to be something that we all need to create together, and we all need to buy into together. I can create things, but I just found, even working with kids, if everybody's got their hands on it, there's a little bit more ownership and a little bit more purpose behind that. So I think creating something that's adaptable enough to make it work for each program. I think everybody's got to be able to put their own individual personality to it. But I think having something would be great. So I even think this has been on my to-do list for a long, long time. And when I probably have an empty nest, which will be here in a few more years, but just even some things that Coach Cooley and I have learned through Leadership Academy is just a sequence of just things to take captains through. And how do you get your kids, your leaders in your program, really leading these sorts of mental Mondays? I think almost has a greater impact than us as coaches standing in front once again. But that means we got to do a little bit of training, and we got to do a little bit of upfront work. But I think the payoff on the backside is huge, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
So how about I give us all a little takeaway homework here? I mean, if you just start thinking about some mental characteristics, some areas that we see our kids lacking in, if we were to put together some sort of a mental curriculum, what's 3 to 5 things that you think our kids would benefit from the most? I mean, obviously we could make a list that's probably 15, 20 items long, but we've got to be respectful of their time and our time. So if you could think of 3 to 5 things that you would love to see the kids in our program grow in terms of a mental area in, let's just start working on a list with that. And we can start putting something together. So we've got the time here. Let's use it.
Sounds great. You're the man.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that at all? Well, maybe next week, one thing that we can do to start is I'll share some things that we've done over the course of our girls cross country program in the area of mental stuff. I don't like being called the expert in it. I always tell people, if I'm an expert in anything, if you use the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hour rule, I'm an expert in failure, because I've failed for 10,000 hours, but all that failure is just giving me an opportunity to learn a lot. So that's what I consider myself an expert in, is failure. But I'll throw out just some things that we've done in the past, some things that we do now, kind of what my thought process is when we talk about mental training with our girls cross country program, and maybe we can use that as a starting point going together. So, and I've done some mental Mondays with some different groups. I worked with Coach Olson's football team a while back. I think Coach Clemenger, that might've been your first year. Coach Wright, Brad had me come in and do some stuff with the girls volleyball team. I think it was Reagan LeGrand's senior year. So I've got a number of different sports that we've kind of thrown some things together with. I shouldn't say thrown to get things together. I don't throw things together. I like to think I'm pretty intentional about it, but again, just some different things that we can work off of. So, all right. Anything else from the group?
Thanks, Coach.
All right. Well, thanks to Coach Brannigan and Coach Johansson for sharing today, kind of spurring on our conversation. And again, our next meeting time is Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. We'll kind of talk through that What Drives Winning video, and maybe based on that, we start jumping into even some of these conversations on the mental side, because I think it relates. Once you start watching that video, I think you'll see a connection even to that. So we'll do that, and then pick up that book at the school, the What Drives Winning Teams book that came in, and we'll go from there. So
Where'd you say that was at?
I think VA said he's going to put them in the front office.
Oh, okay.
So just
Okay.
stop in the front office. And for those of you who requested some for assistance, feel free to, if you've got somebody who's not in the building, feel free to pick that up for them, and you can let the ones that are in the building know that they're up at the high school. So, all right.
Awesome.
Any
Thank you.
closing? You're welcome. Any closing thoughts at all? All right. I appreciate my time with you guys today, getting better. And I look
Awesome.
forward to another one of these conversations on Thursday.
Awesome. Thank you for leading.
All right. You guys have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
Happy and healthy.
Thanks.